Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Voices of the Vic podcast with me, Mike Duffy, and tonight I'm joined by Joe Thomas, and we are here for another instalment of our opposition previews. And today we are here to talk about the game on Boxing Day. We're back at home, thank God, after a terrible loss at Burnley. It feels a bit weird sort of saying that because Burnley are absolutely flying at the moment, but the manner in which we lost, I think, disappointed a lot of people, and Tom Cleverley as well. That's the most angry I think I've heard him in a post-match sort of press conference. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we respond on Boxing Day. But like I say, I am joined by Joe Thomas to discuss this one. Quite appropriate that it's Joe as well, living in Portsmouth at the moment, and we're also joined by Andy from the PO4 podcast, who you'll be hearing from very, very shortly. Before we bring in Andy, though, Joe, how's things with you, mate? Obviously, we're recording this 3 days before Christmas. The Burnley defeat was yesterday. Christmas Day is in 3 days, and then Boxing Day football will commence a day after. Are you all ready for Christmas? Everything all good that end?
I think so, mate. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, presents all present and correct. Yeah, looking forward to that. Actually.
Christmas Eve shopping?
No, I've got to get a few bits food-wise for Christmas Day, which I'm going to pick up on the way home tomorrow. You don't want to get some things too early, veg-wise and that. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. But yeah, other than that, mate, everything's good. Obviously, as you said, yesterday was. You know what? I always say I don't really care if we lose as long as you have a go. But it sounds like they didn't even have a go yesterday, and it's really disappointing that obviously just to hear Tom so angry, because usually he can be a bit deflated and a bit down about a defeat or maybe a draw. But yeah, he really didn't accept that yesterday, did he? So it's going to be really interesting to see. I think potentially we'll probably see from his starting lineup on Boxing Day who the players were that he was talking about potentially for who didn't put in any effort yesterday.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of them's, let's say how it is. I think one of them's backman, and can't see him dropping backman at all. But Musa, maybe Loser comes back in, but then who does he partner him with? So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But is it 3 of the next 4 games are at home, I want to say? Or is it just 2?
It's 3.
Portsmouth,
Cardiff, QPR, then Sheffield United.
Sheffield United, that's the one, yeah. So 3 of the next 4 at home, still not lost at home, touch wood, that continues. And like I say, up next is Portsmouth, and here to talk things all Portsmouth is Andy from the PO4 Cast. Andy, how you doing, mate? You all good?
Good evening, gentlemen. Yeah, good, thank you. Enjoyed listening to your little introduction there. Good to see where you guys are coming from before our game. Sounds like we had slightly different weeks, which is promising.
Yeah, well, before we hit record, Andy actually joined when me and Joe were talking about how bad things were being for Watford recently, and Andy politely reminded us that we are sat in 8th in the table. So it's interesting how contrasting views are. But
yeah, my heart bleeds for you at the moment.
Let's talk of happier times, actually, Andy. Let's start with last season. You obviously won League One by 5 points, beating Derby to the title. How much of a relief was it to get over the line and back into the Championship? Because if my research is correct, the last time you were in was that 2011-12 season. So a bloody long time ago, 12 years it's been since you've been in the Championship. So it must have been one hell of a sigh of relief when that final whistle went and you clinched promotion.
Honestly, it was the actual moment that goal going in was a 89th or 90th minute header against Barnsley on a Tuesday night that sealed it, full with pitch invasion, all sorts. It was, yeah, that with the night out afterwards, definitely in the top 10 to 15 nights of my life, I would say. Yeah, the relief is something I'd struggled to put into words. As you say, we had a fairly dramatic slide down the leagues, and it took a little while to even consolidate in League Two. We had a lot of sort of 16, 17-year-olds, 1-month loans rolling. It was a bad time. You know, when the ball got kicked out the stadium, there was a pause in play. Sort of, it was that genuinely that bad for a bit. And then, yeah, even in League One, we seemed to have stalled a little bit. It was 7 years it took us to get back from League One back to the Championship, and that feeling of relief to get back up to be honest, where I see the club is a mid-table Championship side. For me, is our sort of level where we should, in inverted commas, be. But that's probably because my first few seasons, that's where Pompey were in the old Div 1. Yeah, it's nice to be back. Some new stadiums. It's a bit better quality, not going to lie. It's been a bit of a shock to the system. Some of the teams we've played have looked really rather good compared to, actually, I'm not going to name any League One teams and throw them under the bus. I'm not going to start throwing shade around. But yeah, when you make a mistake in this division, you get punished quite a lot more clinically than you do in League One. I think that's the main thing that has been very, very noticeable.
Yeah, it is a punishing league. Obviously, we find out on many occasions, usually when we're playing away from home at the moment, if mistakes are made, we're not so good as you'll have seen from us so far away. But yeah, just a question. Obviously, you said the night out after the game being one of your favourite. Where did you actually end up? Were you in O'Neill's with all the players and that were celebrating?
Yeah, we did O'Neill's and then went to Drift with the players as well.
Oh, nice, down Palmerston Road.
Yeah. There's a few videos that will never see the light of day, and a couple of players probably don't want any videos to come out from the end of that night. But yeah, it just thankfully we had a hotel booked. I had to be in work in Oxford at like 9:30 the next day, and it was a bit of an effort to get up in time to travel back from Portsmouth back up to Oxford. But yeah, O'Neill's was, I think they had 3 people behind the bar and about 1,000 of us. Maybe 300-400 realistically. And then Drift ended up, they wanted to close and no one left, and then the police came and threw everyone out, including the players. So it was an interesting night. But yeah, the sort of the adrenaline of it, the way we equalised late and then won the game later, and it was just I watched that video clip back of Shocknessy's header going in, and I get goosebumps. Like, even now I can feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up just thinking about it. It's in the top, probably the top moment I've ever had in a football stadium. I don't know what would top it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's, those occasions are amazing. I remember being in Brighton the year we got promoted in 2015 in May, and obviously the buzz. We kind of Middlesbrough were playing Fulham away later in the day, and we needed Borough to lose to get promoted, and we kind of hung around the play. I remember being outside. You've done Brighton away, have you, Andy? Before
I've not done Brighton away. No, I haven't.
You not? Oh, okay, yeah. So at Brighton, like when you come out, you can kind of like hang around. They don't kind of like kick you out and stuff. They open the bar and you can kind of enjoy things around there. And I remember the players came like driving past in the coach, and we're all like celebrating. Obviously, we still hadn't know we got promoted. Then obviously Middlesbrough lost in the 3:00 game. And then me and my friends, we had a decision to make. We were like, do we stay in Brighton and celebrate with like loads of other fans who are staying overnight, or should we go back to Watford and celebrate? So we literally sprinted to the car, went back to Watford, got back into Watford town centre, and we got into a pub where all the players were. And they'd got back, and we were celebrating with the players for a few hours that night. And it was just, as you say, like, I've got videos, and it's one of them things you wouldn't show some of them, give them the light of day, but it was a special night. So I know where you're coming from there.
Incredible. I think for Watford, the one that, I mean, it's probably cliche, and you probably talk about it all the time, would be the Leicester playoff semi. Like, I get goosebumps watching that, and I'm not even a Watford fan, so I can only imagine what that was like live.
It was weird, wasn't it, Mike?
It was almost bittersweet, because at the time, I mean, I assume, I don't think I've ever actually asked you this, Joe, but I assume you were there. Could you go to?
I was. Mate. Well, obviously, I was still living in Watford at that point.
I was in the Rookery. So, for obviously, Andy won't know the stand in which Troy actually scored in. I was in that stand, and I was quite high up at the back. And obviously, when he scored, like, loads of people ran on the pitch, and me and my dad was sort of making our way down the steps to join in the celebrations. But by the time we got down, they'd sort of tried to usher everyone back in. But it was the fact that, yes, it was great and it was amazing, but we lost in the playoff final that season.
Yeah.
And it was a really disappointing end to it. I mean, to be honest, hindsight's a beautiful thing, because if we went up that season, I think we'd have come straight back down, because we weren't ready. The football was, at times, magnificent. Zola had us pinging it around like nobody's business, and it was great. But I just don't think we were ready at the time. And yeah, I mean, it was like I say, bittersweet. Wilfred Zaha up against a 38-year-old Marco Cassetti. I might be doing him injustice there. He might have only been 35, but you get the point. And then an ex-boy, Kevin Phillips, scoring the winning penalty against us. You know, it was a disappointing end, but yeah, I mean, I often see clips pop up on Instagram and TikTok, and you sort of count his lucky stars that you were there in attendance that day. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. I'd imagine you had the same thoughts, Joe.
Oh yeah, it was. I just remember when the penalty was given, I was fuming, and the guy behind me, I just turned around, I picked up my program, put it in my pocket. I said to him, I won't repeat. I don't usually swear on the podcast, but I said to him, have a good summer, and I'll see you next season. And I literally was just waiting. I said, just tell me when it goes in. And I was looking at him the whole time. I actually didn't watch the penalty being taken. And when he said, it's been saved, I just remember the ball coming out, and one of my mates was messaging me during the game. He was wanting to know what was going on. So I was trying to tell him that Leicester had missed the penalty in the last minute. And my mate, who I go with, he was like, Joe, quick, look up. And I just remember the ball coming over. And as I say it, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. But there's that moment where it just sounds like everything's just gone silent, and you just know what's come, or you're expecting something to happen. And then it happened. And my goodness me, I lost keys, my phone. I went about 7 rows in front. It was unbelievable. It was just insane. But yeah, it was, as you know, from the Shaughnessy header, it's a special moment, isn't it? Moments like that, you just got to kind of bottle them, remember it forever, and just cherish it as a football fan.
Yeah, I was about 7 months post quite major shoulder surgery when that Shaughnessy one went in, and I still feel on my mate's back, eagle, falling down.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing how your body just doesn't notice the pain until a bit later on with that sort of thing. It gets you through.
Once the alcohol's worn off as well.
Yeah, that probably did help, to be fair. Yeah.
So yeah, sorry, I did kind of just steer off there.
No, I think I caused it, so don't worry at all.
Obviously, Mousinho came in, and his first game was Exeter City in January 23. He's currently got a win percentage of just over 47%. Obviously, as I said, I speak to a lot of Portsmouth fans at work, and everyone's had different views on Mousinho. What's your thoughts on him, and what are other fans' thoughts on him and his time at the club so far?
Yeah, I think he had a reasonably tough act to follow on a sort of a human level. I mean, the two coaches / managers before him were so polar opposite in terms of you had Kenny Jackett, who you could be 6-0 up, more commonly under him 6-0 down. You could have stolen his keys and his phone. You could have given him the world as a birthday present, and his facial expression would have been the same. Still would have had his arms folded. You know, we scored a 90th minute winner away against Norwich in the FA Cup on his birthday, and he still looked like, you'd mugged him in the press conference after the game. And he didn't really engage and get on with the fan base too well. And then after that, we had the Cowleys, who were the complete other end of the spectrum, where we wanted it to succeed so much. They're just amazingly good blokes. It's really nice to see them doing so well now down at Colchester. When they left, it was mostly with a tinge of sadness for most of the fan base, even with frustration. And they are just two of the best football blokes, just nice people to have around the club. And then, Mousinho's kind of got to follow that act where he's following two of the nicest people on the planet, but he's also under pressure to get results in his first proper, big managerial coaching position, because he was still on the books at Oxford United as a player. Technically as a centre-back when he joined us. So he's had a tough act to follow in that sort of personal respect. But I think he had quite a lot of work to do to win a lot of the fan base over, because people are suspicious of the unknown in general in life, and it was such an unknown quantity. On the pod, we'd gone through all of these managers who'd been linked with us that we'd all at least seen in other roles. and he wasn't even on our short list of potentials. And I mean, he came in and we just sort of went, we don't know who that is. He played against us about 2 years ago, and that's all we got, really. He was part of the team that beat us on that big day in 2013, when we had the big hours banner or the thing in the Fratton End, the famous photo that was a New Beginning when the Supporters Trust bought out the club. And it was a massive day out at Fratton Park, and then we got turned over 4-0 at home by Oxford, and he was in their lineup. And that's basically all the information we had. So it was promising that the Oxford fans were kind of gutted he'd left, because I think they were starting to fall out of love with Carl Robinson at that point, and they were sort of hoping that Messina would be the natural successor.
Yeah, that's what I heard, yeah.
So that was promising, but you can only glean so much from social media responses, as you both know. I'm sure it's a very small and vocal section of every fan base. And yeah, he came in, and to win the league in your first full season is astonishing. And he doesn't get ridiculously high. He doesn't tend to get ridiculously low after one defeat, one win, which I think is becoming more and more common with especially the younger managers in the league. I don't know if you're finding the same with Tom Cleverley. You said that you'd seen him angry after the last game, but in general, you tend to see quite moderate emotional responses, I think.
Yeah.
He is definitely still learning in terms of making adjustments during the game. Definitely still learning, but it's a very steep learning curve, and I think he is learning from potential mistakes there. And I haven't really got a bad word to say about him. He seems like a thoroughly nice bloke. The players seem to really get on with him in a way that maybe they didn't with the Cowleys, some of them. There was a bit of personality clash there, I think, because Danny Cowley was just so positive. You could see that it annoyed some of the grumpier people in the changing room a little bit. But yeah, he's come in, he's done something within, a year, 18 months that Kenny Jackett couldn't do in a number of years. And Danny Cowley and Nicky Cowley couldn't quite manage either. And he's done it in his first year in management. And it wouldn't surprise me if he follows the same sort of trajectory as McKenna at Ipswich and ends up in the higher echelons, maybe not quite as quickly as McKenna has getting promoted with Ipswich. But I think if we're able to consolidate this season, and it's a big if, and then start next season okay, there's going to be interest around him from clubs, I would think.
A lot of similarities there from what you say to what we're seeing with Clevs at the moment, especially with the sort of not getting too high, not getting too low. As we said at the top of I think we said it before we recorded, seeing him that angry, that's the first time we've seen Clevs like that this season. And then the sort of tactical naiveness, I think Clevs sort of admitted that, yes, he could have changed things sort of 15 minutes in, and he maybe regrets not changing things a little bit earlier. And he's still on a learning curve. We have to understand at times that this is Clev's first full season as a head coach. He come in interim last season, but he's got to learn. And then also similarities with you saying, seeing some of the managers you were linked with, saying, who the hell's that? Because we've been there, believe you me, we've been there so many times when we link with, managers from the Georgian First Division and all that. It's, we feel you on that one. But he seems to be sort of turning the ship a little bit this season, because obviously he didn't have a great start, but currently I think you've only lost one in the last 6. And that was, I want to say that was against Derby.
Yeah, that was a 4-0, just write it off and pretend it never happened, that one.
Well, you say that, though. Are things finally sort of taking shape for you a little bit now? It might have took a little bit of time, but it's not a bad time to start sort of steadying the ship, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you say we started the season poorly. We had a very difficult first 6 games. We had Leeds, Sunderland, West Brom, Middlesbrough and Luton, not in that order, in our first 6 games. And I think expectations were fairly low, and any point was seen as a bonus. And we were about 2 minutes away from beating Leeds, although they did dominate the game. We were somehow 2 minutes away from beating them. We were a couple of minutes away from beating Middlesbrough as well, and we drew against Luton, which at the time we thought was an excellent point because we didn't quite know how much they were going to struggle since then. So the first 3 games, I think we had 3 points, and wasn't an awful start. We then really saw the difference, I think, in quality against Sunderland. When they came down to Fratton Park, it looked like 2 different leagues. and West Brom won very comfortably down at Fratton as well. And then I know every team in the division has got injury struggles, but I think we have, it feels from our side that that's really impacted us. We were starting the season with one centre-back being a right-back by trade and the other centre-back being our third choice in League One. They were both that was our starting centre-back pairing. Yeah. And yeah, we've struggled a bit with injuries. Colby Bishop, who is sort of the focal number 9 key player, he missed the start of the season because he had to have heart surgery because of a heart defect that was picked up in the off-season. Cassini Yengi, the other number 9, he struggled a little bit with a step up, and then he's picked up an injury, so he's out for the foreseeable for, I think it's 9 to 10 weeks from a couple of weeks ago he's out for. And the aforementioned Conor Shaughnessy, he's come as close to being back to fitness as he was in the warm-up for one game. And he's really struggled with just recurring injuries. He's now out till February, who's sort of our stalwart at centre-back alongside Regan Poole, who has also picked up a niggle after coming back from an ACL, and he's had a couple of difficult performances too. So it's been very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like tumultuous is probably the word. But yeah, we seem to have found a little bit more of a formula now, in that I think as of a couple of weeks ago, the starting lineup now picks itself other than the 2 centre-backs. I think Messino now knows his starting 11 outside of the 2 centre-backs, where we've got a central midfielder, Marlon Pack, starting at centre-back. And then the other centre-back is sort of up for grabs at the moment because no one's really put a stamp on it. But yeah, we've just got to that point now where we've almost got a starting 11, and that genuinely, a set starting 11. And that genuinely didn't really happen for the first 9, 10, 11 games of the season.
Yeah, am I right in thinking? I think I don't know. I'll be honest, I didn't really pay too much attention to the lineup against Cov yesterday, but I think the 3 games previous to that, it was the same starting 11 consecutively, wasn't it? I think he's.
Did Lang miss one of those through suspension, or did he come back for the 3 before?
I can't actually remember.
Callum Lang missed one game from a yellow card on it, but
right.
I think he might have missed one of those. But
near enough, though. Yeah, I was going to say because like I say, I'll follow Portsmouth and get all the lineup information, and it's nice to see. Obviously, like I say, that they're starting to get a bit better as the games and the season's going on. But obviously, we look at, as we mentioned earlier, our away form. You know, Watford fans shiver at the sight of the form currently. Looking at Portsmouth, you're actually only 1 point worse off than ourselves at the moment away from home. What is it about playing away this season that looks a little bit different to Pompey fans from playing at Fratton Park?
That's a good question. I think the Championship compared to League One, especially last season where it was obvious that we were going to be somewhere near the top of the table, we would go away to clubs and most of them would be fairly happy with a point for the most part, with the exception of teams maybe Bolton, Derby and a couple of the teams in the playoffs. Generally, a point at home against us was a good result, which made we had games against teams like Cambridge that were just horrible to watch. Cambridge away, 0-0 draw. Basically, nothing happened for the 90 minutes. It was congested. It was attritional. It was the way Cambridge needed to play to get the point, and they executed really well. But there were quite a few away games like that. Whereas now, the games are so much more open, which in a way has actually kind of suited us, I think, because the team is used to trying to play a bit more expansive, exciting football. The Norwich 0-0 was one of the only games in recent memory where they've really just dug in and played a bit of a stop-start, not particularly pleasant to watch game and been able to see it out and keep a clean sheet. For the most part, when we've tried to do that, our defensive frailties have meant that we've still conceded and we haven't had enough threat going forward. So we've tended to quite like playing quite nice, you know, it sounds very cliche, but more exciting open football. And it's not quite at the stage of, you know, you'll score this many, but we'll try and score one more. But we realistically know that defensively we're quite suspect. The players are doing their absolute best. There's no sort of lack of effort. But Marlon Pack is a central midfielder by trade. That's where he's used to playing. Riley Towler, who played alongside him in the last game, this is a big step up to championship level. And even in the last game, you could see that him and Marlon Pack weren't really used to playing in the centre-back pairing. So one of them, they weren't on the same wavelength a couple of times that cost us one goal, the Coventry goal, and almost cost a second one where Schmidt made a really good save. They're not quite on the same wavelength in terms of keeping the line, holding the line, knowing where the offside trap is. So Riley Towler would drop deep as Marlon Pack would step forward, and that creates a gap in behind, and there's all sorts going on. So to actually answer your question, I think the away games have suited us because it allows us to play that style of football we quite like playing a bit more. And I wouldn't expect us to keep a clean sheet against you, but I think there is a decent chance that we'll get on the score sheet. And I think they just back themselves to hopefully score more than the opposition on any given day, which we've had mixed results with so far. But we're not in the relegation zone at Christmas, so I'd have taken that at the start of the season. If you offered it, I'd have snapped your hand off.
Well, that high line yesterday, as you mentioned, after that first goal, I couldn't believe how far forward the players were. They were in the Coventry half. It was ridiculous. They literally, and the way Bissett just had the freedom of Portsmouth to run through. I mean, it's a fantastic save, but it was just mad. Like you say, I didn't expect them to be so open.
Yeah, the issue there was, Pack stepped forward to try and play the Coventry player offside just inside our half. Riley Towler took a step back, and all that you need in this, well, even in League One, to be honest with you, all you need is about 2.5, 3 feet of difference with a player, with the offside trap. And as you say, with that much space in behind, I mean, it was sort of kamikaze football a little bit, to be honest with you, at that point. Thankfully, the game turned around, but I don't think we were too confident of that after 15 minutes against Coventry.
This might be a bit of a silly question, considering he scored 4 in the last game, but in terms of obviously looking ahead to the game itself, who would you point out as a danger man that Watford needs to be aware of? Obviously, if those listening don't know what I'm referring to, Callum Lang scored 4 goals, all 4 goals against Coventry at the weekends, and has become the 3rd member to score 4 in a game. Obviously, Vacuum Bio of Watford Parish scored 4 against Sheffield Wednesday. And sorry to mention it, Andy, but Thomas Cannon scored 4 in a 6-1 win against Portsmouth. And then Callum Lang scored 4 yesterday for Portsmouth against Coventry. So is Callum Lang going to be the answer? If he is, that's great. If there's anyone else that we should be aware of, please do let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that 4 goals in the game, I think it was the first time that's happened for Pompey since, I want to say, Yakubu. I think I heard it was first time in about 20 years that a Portsmouth player had done that. So it's been a while coming. And
good knowledge.
I mean, that's kind of, it's what Lang has deserved, really. I mean, he's our top goal scorer this year anyway, so far. But he's been the only player that week in, week out has caused genuine problems to championship level defenders. He did the same in League One, but he's really made that step up, probably more than we expected. He first came into Pompey to play right attacking mid, sort of the right-hand side of a 4-2-3-1, but now he's playing at 10 behind Colby Bishop. So he is definitely probably the danger man at this point, but I don't think that's particularly in-depth analysis, as he's our top goal scorer and scored 4 in the last game. I'll try and give you a bit more than that. The other player on their day, probably Josh Murphy, who'll be playing on the wing in a 4-2-3-1 on the opposite side to Matt Ritchie. He scored a couple of lovely goals in the last couple of weeks. And I think, which game was it? Swansea. I think he scored 1 beautiful goal and set up the other one out of nothing. And he's one of those sort of flair attacking players. We signed him from Oxford United in the off-season. He was missing at the start of the season through injury and has come in and just cemented his place. And then Matt Ritchie on the other side he's come back to his boyhood club from Newcastle and took a bit of time to get up and running, to be honest with you. There were a few people thinking his legs had gone a little bit. He didn't look up to speed at all towards the start of the season. Last 7 or 8 games, wow. It's a serious redemption arc he's got going on, and I'm a big fan of it. The chasing down, the stamina he's showing. He's only in the last couple of games he's been fit enough to get towards playing a full 90. He'd been coming off in the 60th, 65th minute before that. but the work rate and his ball into the box in the Coventry game, especially from a dead ball, was unbelievable. That sort of left-footed outswinger away from the keeper from the left-hand side, just it's a level above the type of delivery that we're really used to seeing, especially in League One. And that front four genuinely are quite, they can cause problems to a defence. We're just on the flip side of that, Achilles heel defensively. I thought we were quite similar to Coventry in that we look good going forward. Absolute basket case at the back for large parts of the game. So, yeah, it's not boring. I'd be surprised if it was a 0-0 based off that.
So, just before you jump in, Joe, when you mentioned, obviously, Matt Ritchie, I completely forgot he was there. He's a player that Watford are no stranger to, because, I mean, not only have we were linked with him before he went to Portsmouth, but I always remember him, Watford and Bournemouth, for years, sort of 2014 to, I'd say even 2019-20, when we were relegated in the COVID season. We always had good battles. There were a couple of 0-0s thrown in there, but it was always quite tasty, and they almost became a sort of a second rival, as well as that team down the M1, which we shan't name. But, I always remember the Bournemouth games being quite tasty, and Matt Ritchie was always one of the players that you'd sort of come away and you just have this hatred for, and you almost want one for your team. A bit like Tom Ince, really. Every Watford fan hated Tom Ince because he always scored against us. So we thought, you know what? We'll wait a few years, wait till his legs have gone, and then we'll sign him on 50 grand. And then, he's done all right for us. Don't get me wrong, he's a good professional, but he's not what he was. So Matt Ritchie, that's going to be interesting to see that battle sort of reignited. But yeah, sorry, Joe.
No, that's all right, mate. It's fine. What areas of the pitch do you think Watford can hurt Portsmouth most in? Obviously, we just spoke about the old the high line, but are there any other areas particularly that you think that we might pose a threat?
Yeah, I think most teams have caused some more issues down our left side defensively with Conor Ogilvie, who has put in, to be fair, a better couple of performances recently. Really struggled at the start of the season making the step up. I mean, to be honest with you, first game against Dan James was an absolute baptism of fire against Leeds. And he hasn't had a huge amount of help from the left side of centre-back on the whole. So I think there's a couple of times where he's kind of been the fall guy, where he's looked like the guy that's messed up, when in reality, if the left side of centre-back was doing their job, Ogilvie wouldn't have even been in that position in the first place. But having said that, yeah, the left side of defence is where I'd say we're probably most vulnerable. There's been a couple of occasions where we've just switched off from throw-ins down the left. Ogilvie will either close down and leave a massive gap behind, or will stand off too much and let the player run at him. And he's not very good at, most defenders aren't particularly good at dealing with it when a fast winger is running directly at them, a fast and skillful winger. It's not an easy thing to deal with. But yeah, I think that's realistically where you'll get most joy. Hopefully not, but potential joy. There's a couple of games as well where we've struggled a little bit in central midfield. It's slightly better now that Dozzell has found a bit of form. He struggled in his first few games when he came to us after leaving QPR. And Freddie Potts as well came in, looked solid, had a couple of iffy games, but he was better last time out. But the teams that have really done well against us have been the teams that have not allowed us to play out from the back. So we've generally tried to play short passes out from defence to central midfielder, turn, hit the wings. And teams like Sunderland, for example, we didn't get past the first stage of that. We'd play the ball out from defence and we'd be facing our own goal, and then we would lose possession. Last couple of games, we've gone a little bit more direct. So I don't know exactly which way it will go against you. Which going more direct has been effective, obviously with the exception of the Derby game, which I've tried to forget even happened, because it was one of those days where you just shrug and go, right, well, what now? Like, what's the point in even reviewing that? But yeah, we've got a bit more direct last couple of games, but I've literally forgotten what your question was.
No, you've answered it. We were asking in terms of what areas Watford can hurt you on the pitch, and I am just so relieved someone has said the left-hand side now, because we ask every opposition podcast that comes on because, of course, we want to know, if Watford can get joy, we know our strengths, and we're like, right, can we exploit the opposition? And Cardiff fan said the right side, Hull fan said the right side, and now, thank God, someone has said the left. And Joe will know exactly why I'm buzzing about that, because if Kwadwo Bar, whether he comes off the bench or whether he starts, he is an animal. I mean, the pace, the power, the speed of him, Championship fullbacks just can't deal with him. So it's really going to be interesting to see if we can exploit that. And as well, if we match you, if you do go, you obviously said there, you go with the 4-2-3-1. We started the season with a back three, and then a couple of times, if it wasn't working, Clevs would sort of change it to make it a 4-2-3-1. I think we started with that 4-2-3-1 against Burnley. Didn't quite work. That central midfield role sounded like we took an absolute hammering. So he had to switch it up again. So it's going to be interesting to see if we match up in that regard. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. It's certainly not going to be as straightforward as maybe some Watford fans think. But in terms of, obviously, we've not played each other for a while. I think the last time we played each other was that last season you were in the Championship.
Yeah,
and there's a game in my head already. That was what, sorry?
That'd be 12 years ago or so. Yeah, it'd be a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any, granted, you have to cast your mind back quite a while. Is there any games between us two that stick out in your head, whether it's away from home, whether it's at Fratton Park, whether it's good memories or bad memories? Any Watford Portsmouth games? I mean, there's one in my head already, and I'm sure there'll be plenty in Joe's head, but we'll come to you first, Andy, as you're the guest.
Is the one in your... I remember losing 4-2 to you.
That wasn't the one in my head, no.
Okay, I remember losing 4-2 to you at Vicarage Road back in 07, 08, one of them. 06, 07, 08, one of them. That's probably the game that dicked out.
We were crap.
You were crap. Oh, how bad were we?
That was when we were in the Prem under Eddie Boothroyd. Yeah.
Purely because of goals scored, that's probably the one that stands out. Which game were you referring to?
I was thinking of that last season that you boys were in there. It was on BBC, I'm pretty sure it was. And we won 3-0, and Andrew Taylor scored an absolute beaut of a volley from the edge of the box. Danny Graham scored and then lifted his shirt up, and he was like Watford's table tennis champion again. And then Marvin Sordell scored. And
that's a name you don't hear often anymore, isn't it? Marvin Sordell.
I know, yeah. So we're currently plying his trade at Kettering. I was sat behind him at the Blackburn game in October, so he still looks out for us. But yeah, that Danny Graham celebration, that's quite an iconic one in terms of celebrations. And whenever anyone watches this podcast, we always do a graphic for the podcast and always try and get a picture of a game between us two. And obviously, it's been a while since we've played, so the little graphic on our podcast thumbnail for this podcast is Graham with the celebratory vest. But yeah, mine was at 3-0. I just remember under Malky Mackay, I really, really liked that team because we weren't necessarily had the sort of highest of quality players, but you knew everyone was putting 100% in, and the real team spirit of that game was the real team spirit throughout that team was brilliant. So that one was mine. Joe, you must
should you not be using a thumbnail from the most recent game? So that was a 2-0 Portsmouth win, wasn't it? So
that is
in the interest of recency, surely some depressed looking Watford players as we scored our second would do the job equally well.
We've had too many of them over the years, so I like to try and brighten it up. But Joe, you must have a few. Obviously when we play Birmingham, that's a game I remember loads of them. So you must have loads.
Yeah, I've been to a few Watford Portsmouth games. I was just going to show a photo. So this is me in the away end on the 18th of November 2006, when we lost. In fact, I'll say it's the only ground I've ever been ejected from, Fratton Park. I was ejected in the 93rd minute when Chris Foy decided to give a penalty against Watford, and Kanu was through. Jay Demerit he was alleged to have brought him down. Yeah, it was.
Good to see you got over that, Joe.
No,
To be fair, I can't throw shade on that because we're still fuming about Robert Pires diving in Arsenal's invincible season. I'm still not over that, so I can't judge. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I'm not over it, to be honest. And yeah, it was obviously, as you remember, Andy, the Milton end has obviously now got a roof on.
Yeah.
Back in the day when it was all open, I just remember it having like these cardboard cutout hatches that you kind of just walk through to the to be in the away section. And I remember being at the back by literally the seat on the end as you come out of the into the concourse area, and everyone was swearing because Foy was so bad. But because the police were stood next to me and I was swearing next to this copper, he didn't like it. And I hadn't bought a ticket myself that day, and I bought it back in the day. It was easy to get tickets through. We had a message board, and I got a ticket off this lovely couple. I was stood with them, and this copper was like picking on me. And he was like, look, if you swear again, this was in like the 30th minute, if you swear again, I'm going to throw you out. And I was like, oh, goodness sake, I'm going to have to keep your mouth shut. It's like 32 minutes on the clock. I was like, how am I going to keep your mouth shut now? And then I literally just remember he gave the penalty in the last seconds, and I literally lost it. And he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and he was like, right, you're out. So I didn't actually see the penalty get taken. I just remember all the celebrations and everything from being outside. But yeah, that's probably my most memorable game, Watford Portsmouth wise. But you know, I've been to games. I remember us playing Portsmouth on Boxing Day '94. That was one of my first Watford.
I wasn't even
you
born
look
then.
incredible for your age, Joe.
Oh, thanks.
Good. How old are you?
I'm 38, mate.
Okay, I wouldn't have placed that. 1994. Wow.
Yeah, so I remember us playing Portsmouth on Boxing Day. Usually our games, and obviously I said this when when Portsmouth got promoted, that it was either going to be a Christmas or New Year's Day game or an Easter game, and obviously the Football League have obliged by doing that again this season. So yeah, lots of memories, but I'm hoping we're going to get some good ones this season.
Well, Joe, we won that Boxing Day fixture 2-0 on Boxing Day.
I think if I remember rightly, I'm going to sound horrendous here. I think Neil Shipley scored.
It didn't show me the scorers annoyingly. Otherwise, I'd love to tell you that he wrong. But no, I don't know.
Obviously
Neil Shipley. Didn't he recently get done for indecent exposure?
Now
I was going to say, yeah, good stuff. And also, I think we lost that one that Chris Foy. You become such good friends with Chris Foy. Didn't have 2-1.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, Jade Merritt scored, and then was it Kazenga Lualua?
Lualua.
Yeah, he scored the penalty in the 89th minute. But yeah, I've just had a look at that 2-0 that you were referring to, Andy, and for the life of me, I genuinely, not just saying this, I cannot remember that. I'm just looking at the lineups here, and it's funny how football works. The Hayden Mullins scored, and he obviously went on to become our interim manager in the Premier League after Nigel Pearson got sacked. So yeah, it's weird how football works. But
which one was that again? Sorry,
that was the last meeting between us where we lost 2-0 at Fratton Park, and it was on the 2nd of January. So yeah, Joe, absolutely bob on. It's either Boxing Day or New Year's. It was the 2nd of Jan 2012.
Yeah,
so,
that 4-2 game in the Prem as well. I remember for another home one, Gavin Martin scored an absolute worldie. I mean, that's one of the best goals I've seen at Vicarage Road, where he come back in it out on the volley. I was just unbelievable.
Yeah, Boaxa got 2, Priskin got 1, and Gavin Martin. And then
I think we were relegated by then.
Yeah,
it was a nothing game.
Yeah, well, we won a couple at home. I think we beat Middlesbrough at home that season. Like I said, that season, I mean, we shouldn't have gone up in 05-06 anyway. I mean, obviously we deserved to in the end because we were incredible. But with the squad we had, we were tipped for relegation. So, you know, we all knew that season was going to be a long old slog. But I remember that game because of it being one of the very few sort of wins that we picked up. And then Matt Taylor and Arnold Mvemba Probably butchered that pronunciation, but they scored for Portsmouth. But just to finish on Boxing Day's game, Andy, what's your score prediction for this one? What you feeling? Are you are Portsmouth going to be the first team since March to win at Vicarage Road, or are you going for a draw or a loss? Or
well, when you put it like that, I'm going to sound like an idiot if I say that the team 19th in the league are going to be the first 19th in the league are going to be the first team to come and win at Vicarage Road for so long. What I normally do is if I think we're going to lose a game, I predict a draw. And if I think we're going to draw a game, I predict a win, just in the interests of, bias and optimism. So I'll go with a 1-1 draw, and you could read into that whatever you'd like. Honestly, it depends which Pompey turn up. If the Pompey turn up who played against Derby, you could run in at least as many as they scored. But hopefully that was just an off day. I think if we can get through the first 20 minutes, we normally start slow. If we can get through the first 20 minutes, I'd back us to pick up a point. Having said that, that's a big if. The first 15, 20 minutes, I think we've conceded 10 goals in that first 15 minutes already this season. So if we can get through that, I'll go with a 1-1 draw. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. And I'm hoping that we've got enough going forward against you to even it out.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, Joe. What are you thinking score-wise here? Are we going to keep it tight again, like we have done so many times this season at home?
I don't know. I've obviously, like I say, I've watched Portsmouth a few times this season. Obviously, if Lang has another good game, it's going to be tough. If Bishop does well up front, they've got players, as you said, Richie. If he plays well, he's, as you mentioned, Mike, in them Bournemouth games, he's caused us issues and stuff in the past, and he's one of them players that I just don't like seeing on a team sheet, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a tight 2-1 home win, but I wouldn't be shocked if the game ends in a draw, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's sort of where my head was at. I initially thought 2-1, but me and you were texting earlier, Joe, earlier today, and I was sort of saying that it would be Pete Watford to start having a wobble now. And I think we were maybe all expecting to have a wobble at times this season. I mean, bloody hell, we were expecting to go down this season, let alone, have a wobble. So I think it would be typical of us to have a wobble around Christmas time, especially with the games thick and fast.
We would appreciate that very much if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah,
we could really use the points.
Watford will spread the Christmas cheer and give out points accordingly. But yeah, I'm actually going to go for a 2-2. I don't quite think we'll lose at home just yet. I think that one's set in stone for Cardiff. Omar Ritza coming back to the Vic, and they're playing so poorly at the moment. And I'd seen a lot of their fans on Twitter moan about how bad Saturday was. That's just Watford written all over. That's like, here you go, lads. You have these 3 points. So, yeah, I think 2-2. I think it's going to be a really tight affair. And, I think we'll sort of cancel each other out. So, 2-2. 2 draws predicted and a narrow Watford win. So, but yeah, I think that pretty much brings an end to this opposition preview. Thank you very, very much for joining us, Andy. And the PO4 podcast, all the links to that will be in the description below. So make sure you check those guys out. Will you guys will you be doing a preview and then a review of the game? How do you guys work with your stuff?
We've got a preview that went out. We did it before the Coventry game. We kind of did a bumper episode because we're all around over Christmas. We're all going to different places. So our episode had a combined Watford and Coventry preview. So it's our most recent episode on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, all of those places. And then there will be hopefully not post-mortem of some sort, but I'm assuming the Watford listener base will probably be more interested in us if it is a post-mortem. So they're welcome to come and listen, whatever the result.
Excellent stuff. And just a reminder for our listeners as well, obviously this podcast will be out on the 23rd. And the Christmas special will still be relevant. That is on our YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. We had a right laugh recording it, and hopefully you guys will have just as much of a laugh listening back to it. So make sure you go and listen to that. And we'll be back. I think we'll be back possibly Boxing Day, maybe the 27th. to do a review of the Portsmouth game. Hopefully, another positive review of another unbeaten game at Vicarage Road. But until then, I suppose it's Merry Christmas, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe as well, and come on, you Horns.